I had majestic clearance. Majestic clearance was designated as clearance 38 levels above Q clearance, and Q clearance is the civilian top secret clearance. It probably really hit me when I got inside the craft.
The investigation program, reverse engineering program, and cover-up associated with that since that time.
After working at S4 for several months and in clear violation of his top secret clearance, Bob Lazar decided to tell his closest friend, Gene Huff, about his work at the base.
My reaction was to, without pressing him against his will, find out more, get him to tell me anything I could. And it wasn't disbelief. I think I was actually motivated to further read. I started investigating other books on UFOs and other researchers' information to see if anyone knew anything, and needless to say, they didn't know what Bob knew.
Born in 1959 in Coral Gables, Florida, Bob has lived much of his life in Las Vegas, Nevada. With degrees in physics and electronics from MIT and Caltech, he has dabbled in everything from chemistry to fireworks in an effort to understand the finer points of propulsion. He has even assembled a jet car with a 22,000 horsepower engine salvaged from a Navy F-3D Skynight.
Put in, back then they were called Earth stations, big satellite dish, but you know, now they're 2 feet. They used to be 7 feet across and larger. And yeah, I remember putting in that pad and putting in a big, you know, Earth station satellite receiver there. But yeah, that was around 82 or 83, something like that. No, maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember what
was
year. 81. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But
it was in Los Alamos.
And you made a joke and you brushed off the pine needles and you go, "Oh yeah, see, Stan, I never worked there." And you know, it was funny because you just like rediscovered it. So you've never been like really deeply interested in like proving everybody wrong that you're right, and that's been admirable.
No, I don't care. In fact, like I always said, I prefer everybody don't believe it, because then nobody bothers me. Yeah, he's crazy, and
he's a guy who could be discredited earlier. You let him tell that story, and then you pull the rug out from under him. You know, because you look at him. You know, his house. He would fly a pirate flag over his house. He raced jet cars. Have these gigantic jet cars in his front yard. He liked hookers, prostitutes. He liked machine guns. He's a very unconventional guy. Someone who you got to figure. I wouldn't give him a security clearance.
Important thing is with Lazar is that the information about his educational background was in the very first lesson, and I've said it in public a few times, but the important thing is with Lazar is that the information about his educational background was in the very first story that we aired. The very first report that identified him, we said we could not verify his background. And I will confide to you this. I don't believe he ever went to those schools. I don't believe Bob Lazar could get a degree from Caltech or MIT for a very simple reason. At American universities, when you get a degree, an undergraduate degree, you have to take all kinds of core courses in subjects that you may not be interested in. Literature. I cannot possibly imagine, and Anna, you know Bob, I can't imagine Bob Lazar sitting through a class in American Lit or reading poetry or something like that. He'd never stand for it. There is no way in hell that he sat through that stuff to get a degree. So
the whole place, so I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know.
Bob, could you tell us about your education? Not just a couple of different conflicting things I'd like to hear from you.
That varies widely. As far as electronic technology, my degree there is from Caltech, and physics is from MIT.
When did you graduate? Did you go to?
Yeah, I did. Okay. Where did you hear that?
Pre-radar at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. And before that, I was in midshipman school in New York on the Prairie State.
Were you out of Stanford before you went to the MIT and the radar stuff?
No. I went to radar school in 1945.
At MIT?
Yeah. And I had gone to pre-radar at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. And before that, I was in midshipman school in New York on the Prairie State. And before that, I was at the University of California, where we did some physics. But everybody was very touchy at Berkeley in those days. That was in 44, 45, because the whole thing was starting to cook. But
Meaning the bomb.
the bomb, yeah. And we always felt we were minor players, and I think we were. On the other hand, we were part of the walk up the mountain to the beautiful rockets that we fire today, and the knowledge that's there. And we served in a way to remind the Germans that Americans like free enterprise, that they could run their show in Houston, and Von Braun was really something. But we also were competing with them too. And so that healthy spirit, I think, helped a little bit.
You weren't married at the time, but if you had been, you couldn't have told your wife, right?
It's dangerous to tell girls anything.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome. Some of you are aware that I have slowly been pecking away at a documentary project of sorts that will be added to our free documentaries section here. And that is on the subject of Bob Lazar. I thought that it would be great if somebody could compile together in one video all the rest of the story that the people selling you the Bob Lazar story don't want you to see. We saw in the introduction to tonight's broadcast that, you know, people play real fast and loose with the facts. You hear that one person selling the story just claiming that Bob Lazar went to MIT and Caltech. That's not the case. Bob Lazar never attended either of those schools. Full stop, period. So, you know, one of the other things that always bothers me as well is that you'll see written articles or videos where they say former government scientist. He's not a scientist. His education is completely and totally fake. In fact, he's, as we've joked about many times here, and you'll see it in the thumbnail, Bob Lazar is a convicted pimp. He ran a whorehouse. These are not things that add credibility to his evidence-free story. And remember, originally came out with his story in 1989. No one has proven anything, not George Knapp, not Jeremy Corbell, no one else. There's a new person that's going to be selling a new documentary about Bob Lazar, also on the very credulous or believer side. And they don't give you all of the information. We also saw in the opening to tonight's broadcast, by the way, that was put together by tonight's guest, we also saw Bob Lazar in the Jeremy Corbell film talking about installing a satellite dish at Los Alamos. And, you know, a little bit of logic and critical thinking goes a long way. After all, senior staff level physicists, which is what he claimed was his job at Los Alamos, they don't install satellite dishes. You know who does? A low-level electronics technician, which is what Bob did at Los Alamos. And we know that because in the phone book that had his name at Los Alamos for that time, the initials KM were next to his name, Kirk Meyer, which means he was hired as a subcontractor to Los Alamos through Kirk Meyer. Kirk Meyer did not ever hire physicists, or especially senior staff level physicists. They hired low level electronics technicians, the kind of guy who would like get you a new computer and hook it to the network if your computer died in the lab, or things like that, or install satellite dishes. Bob Lazar's only known education is one electronics technology course at Pierce Junior College. And you know, I love that they always use the rocket car thing as like proof he's a science guy. No, there's many people that have no degrees in science that build rockets, rocket cars, jetpacks, all kinds of stuff. Look on YouTube. There's all kinds of people like that are just tinkerers. But our guest tonight found some interesting things and maybe has developed a new theory about where some parts of the Bob Lazar story came from. And it's something I never caught and it's a pretty interesting theory. We're going to bring him in here. We'll take a moment to welcome the live chat. Before we begin, I'd like to tell people we're a viewer-supported show and we read every single super chat. But when we have guests here, it's very distracting to stop the conversation and read the super chat. So I'll read these, the ones that we've gotten so far, and then we'll read whatever other super chats there are after our conversation here. We want to thank Rotary Motion with a kind and generous £2. What's your favorite tune? That is, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. There's just I'm just such a lover of music. To pick one song that is my favorite, I'd really have to think about that. I will think about it and let you know, Rotary Motion. I'm sorry, but you put me on the spot. But thanks for helping us to praise the cat. All right, we've got another kind and generous person, John Chow, with a kind and generous $5 super chat. Says Victor, aka Whitley Strieber, said back in the 90s he doesn't know of Bob, but said they used retina scans, not hand scans. Which grift do you believe? I don't believe either of them. John Chow. And the fact that Jeremy Corbell said his favorite movie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but didn't connect that hand scanner was in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Very, very suspicious, but thanks for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash.
All right. Let's just bring our guest here. Let me make sure I have the background correct. He's been here one other time talking about Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and their, let's just say, less than credible methods to sell a story. Welcome, Grider. Hello.
Hey, Stephen. How you doing? Thanks
good.
For having me.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, talk to you. So I don't even know where to begin. I think I covered some of the stuff in the video. Did you know that when he was talking about installing a satellite dish, did you catch that? That like scientists don't do that at a lab that big?
I actually just found that clip about 45 minutes ago, going through a transcript that I compiled of most of Bob Lazar's interviews. I had never seen that before, so that was new to me. Pretty fascinating, huh?
Yeah, well, I caught it right away when I first saw that clip, not tonight, but previous. You know, basically, Jeremy Corbell is using that as proof. It's like, see, he did work at the lab. He remembers this satellite dish we saw there. He remembers installing it. Well, there's one problem. Senior staff level physicists do not install satellite dishes. That's just not how this works, you know? So it's one of those.
I mean, it's the classic Bob Lazar defense. It's like, I mean, I call it the Bob Lazar defense, which is where anything that disproves or debunks you, you just flip it around to where now it's like supporting evidence for you, you know? Oh, you can't find my, my 2 degrees that I have. Oh, well, it's because the government clearly, they clearly went and they erased it, right? So you turn it around in like a piece of evidence. These guys are great at it. They're professionals.
Yeah. And it's the lie by omission that makes the story work. You know, one thing you'll notice is that everybody that's profiting from or selling his story, they leave out half of the story because that half doesn't really help them to make people believe that this is true. You know, like how many people, if you find out he's not a real scientist, will care? You know, or how many people, if they find out he's a convicted pimp who was bankrupt at the time and his wife at the time was a convicted murderer, you know, this is another red flag. The fact that his wife at the time was a convicted murderer who had very strong ties to organized crime in the form of Hell's Angels, this means he would never have been given a clearance to work on any secret government projects because it was the height of the Cold War. He would be considered an extreme risk for 2 reasons. One, he was bankrupt at the time. They won't allow anyone with money problems to work on secret projects because they're a security risk. They're maybe easily bribable by our adversaries like China or especially Russia. And then you add the second red flag. His wife was a convicted murderer with very strong ties to organized crime. This is another huge red flag that would mean he'd never be able to step foot on a secret base. Full stop. Just based on those 2 things. And I've talked to people that used to do the clearance background checks, including people that did them during that time period. And I've gotten two on the record sources. I don't have them in front of me, but both of them said, no way on God's green earth would he be cleared to work at Area 51 during that time period. And then we add a third red flag. Bob Lazar once said that there was, before he got to Area S4 to work on the alien spaceships, there were scientists from both the United States and from Russia, from the Soviet Union, I apologize, from the United States and from the Soviet Union working on this problem together. This is absolutely ridiculous. There's no way on God's green earth that the United States during the height of the Cold War would welcome Soviet scientists into the most secret base in America. There's just this, so all these red flags,
absolutely,
they all pop up, It's very difficult for me. I'm working on this documentary project. I think what I'm going to do is just red flags as like a plot device, to say, here's a red flag, here's a red flag, here's a red flag. Because there's so many data.
I mean, the whole movie is going to be red, The whole movie's going to be red,
Yeah, but don't you think that somebody should do that, Bob Lazar, the rest of the story? I think it needs to be out there. It's just a public service, So there's just too many
absolutely.
people. They do the lie by omission. And there's another term which is escaping my mind. I'm blanking so bad on it. There's another term, maybe somebody can help me in the live chat. There's a term which means if you're not given the most important part of the story, there's a term that means that. So what we have is the lie by omission, and also this other situation in which the most important parts, the most important information, they don't give to the viewers, because those most important parts would kind of blow the story to shit, and then there's no money to be made, right?
Yeah, I think maybe like a misrepresentation, maybe could be considered, I guess, kind of like a lie by omission in that case. But yeah, it's just the bigger the lie, the more that people believe it. I know somebody said that. I can't remember which grifter said that, but some famous grifter said that. And it's proven true time and time again.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. So where do we begin with this kind of new information that you've come up with?
If I shared my screen with you, and we've got a picture of a man. All right, so this man's name is Harry Fecter. All right, and he was born in 1921. He was born in Canada, and then he and his family came down to Washington State. And Fecter is a German name, but they were ingratiated, like they were settled over here well before the wars broke out. So there's nothing afoot, as far as anything like that.
So he wasn't a Nazi, and he was worthy of
that
trust.
Was absolutely. I made sure to double check on that. They're pure American patriots. This guy is a hero, and as you'll come to find out, this guy, Dr. Fecter. So basically, this guy joined the Navy. He was in the naval. It was right around 1944. He joined the Navy, went and became a midshipman, and worked with what was preliminary at the time, the radar technology that was like kind of coming out right around that time. And he went to train at MIT as part of that training in the technology with the new radar. And after that, he went and he got degrees. Once the war ended and everything, he went and he got degrees in electrical engineering and physics from Stanford. He also got a degree from,
isn't that interesting?
I think it's Washington State, or maybe it's the University of Washington.
So same degrees that Bob Lazar claimed to have.
Exactly. And then he got a PhD from Stanford in physics. So he was the guy had basically 3 degrees. He had a degree in physics, degree in electrical engineering, and then a PhD in physics. And then, of course, he had the training in the radar from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Then after that, he went and he worked as a physicist. Yeah. So then after that, he went and he worked as a physicist for the government down at the Wendover base, which was an air base right on the Utah-Nevada border. And around that time, 1948, 1950, between that period, they were doing a lot of reverse engineering of Nazi technology that was captured at Peenemünde. Peenemünde was like the Werner von Braun base that the Nazis did the V2 work at.
So wait a minute. In case people are missing the parallels, we have a scientist who we also saw in your introduction. He worked on secret projects for the United States government. He has degrees in electronics and physics, and he also worked on reverse engineering projects, which were top secret for the government.
The most top secret. Like he had at the time, he had the highest clearance possible, which was not Majestic 38 levels above top secret. It was top secret. That was, a Q.
I don't know.
A Q clearance is what they had.
Nobody I ever asked said Majestic clearance is a real thing.
I've never heard of Majestic.
Work of fiction. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great title for a clearance, though. Like, I mean, it's definitely a cool title for a clearance, but it's not based in reality. So he got a Q clearance. This guy was living on the base. That's how top secret his work was. This is the same base where they trained the crew that flew the Enola Gay to go bomb, to go bomb Japan. This is where the hangar is still standing today. It's dilapidated and falling apart, but it's still there. It's where they train for all the maneuvers to escape, after they drop the bomb. And it's closed down now, though. It's actually fallen apart, and it's kind of in a.
Can you imagine being, just from a historic perspective, like imagine being on the crew of that Enola Gay, the first airplane to drop an atomic bomb. They didn't know if they were going to make it after they dropped. They didn't know if they were going to make it out of the blast zone before the
absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
so how
this
brave
base was the place to be.
Pilots and that crew, because they had to know.
They were heroes.
Like, pretty good possibility that nuclear explosion and the shock wave might destroy our airplane and kill us instantly right after we drop this bomb, but they did it anyway. So,
well, they knew that they were going to be saving, hundreds of thousands of lives, by stopping the invasion of Japan. But, that airbase, was really just the place to be, especially if, you were a physicist, in the science field, because that's where all the reverse engineering was going on right around that early 50s time period, 1950s
they
time
had all
period.
the captured Nazi technology.
All of it. They had hangars full of the technology that they took from Peenemünde, and lots of infrared technology. That's where all the infrared strides were made, at this base. And so then after that, what does he do? All right. Then he goes and this guy, Dr. Fechter, he's a doctor at this time. He goes and he discovers two subatomic particles with a person who at the time was not, but they became a Nobel laureate, and then another PhD, genius physicist. So they discovered two subatomic particles. I don't know what that means, but I know it's pretty serious if you discover two subatomic particles. He went on to found the physics department. He started the physics department at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. Like, he founded it. He was the chairman of that department forever. He also worked for Boeing on like the precursors to surface to air missiles, what they called at the time ground air pilotless aircraft, basically SAMs. Also, I forgot that he also worked with the brother of Oppenheimer. So he actually worked on classified projects with the brother of the guy who made the bomb. And during this time, in his spare time, he was an inventor too. This guy invented metal fuel cell technology that basically uses aluminum to power automobiles. And he had patents up to his death that he was making, that he was filing. And yeah. And there's some drama later on in his life where people were trying to steal his work, and he became very concerned about that, towards the end of his life. But that was like in the 80s. So anyways, this he, has a family. I think he had Dr. Fechter. He was married twice, and with his second wife, I think he had 4 kids total, and they settled down in Las Vegas in 1967. And Yeah, so this is Dr. Fechter. This is Dr. Bob Fechter. He died in 2003. He was a good friend of George Knapp's, and he was also the father-in-law of George Knapp.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Kind of makes you take
Was
pause.
he,
You know, it's
was he George Knapp's father-in-law in 1989 though, or does this happen later?
they were friends. As best as I can tell, they were friends. Yeah.
So he knew him at the time that Bob Lazar comes out with his story. That's
To
pretty
the best that I've been
interesting.
able to tell, to the
That's
best of my
pretty
knowledge,
interesting.
yes.
That's pretty interesting because there's so many parallels between this guy's real story and Bob Lazar's fake story, right? We've got the same degrees. We've got, oh, I invent things. We've got, oh, I work on top secret projects. We've got, oh, I've back engineered things, right? Yeah. So here are the parallels.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you replace the reverse engineering of Nazi technology with UFOs, you basically have the same story, you know, sliding the timeline forward by, couple, decades. But yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting considering that George Knapp is the person who broke this story. And just to be clear, this is a theory, but many people have expressed to me that they believe that George Knapp and John Lear and Gene Huff and Bob Lazar all concocted the Bob Lazar story together in order to profit. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that's one theory that's out there. It's easy to see that Gene Huff was directly involved in the money situation with Bob Lazar because they formed a company together to sell that original VHS tape with Bob telling his story. And just after he
They made a
comes
lot
out
of money
with
off of that tape too. They made
Well,
a lot of money off of that.
$30 a pop. And Grider, I have often told this story. The quick version is I wanted to buy that from the back of I think it was Popular Science or Popular Mechanics. My dad got all these science magazines. And so Bob Lazar and Gene Huff would advertise in the back of the science magazines, like find the truth about UFOs, what the government really knows, Bob Lazar and the government Bible. So it was $30 and I had the money, but I didn't have I didn't know how to do this. My father had to help me. He had to write a check, and he's writing the check. And my father was kind of old school. He was an aircraft mechanic, by the way, and he loved top secret space planes and sciencey stuff, but he totally was a non-believer in anything alien or UFO. He's like, you're wasting $30 of your hard-earned money on this bullshit, right? So I'm like, no, I got to see this tape. And the tape arrives a couple weeks later, maybe a month later, and I sat and watched it with my father. And he sat there looking at me the whole time going, this guy's fake, right? This guy's fake. And I often reflect back to me and my dad watching that tape, right? And him saying, this guy is fake. Because my father's, sadly, he's passed away many years ago. But I wonder, what would he think about the fact that one of the most leading people on the internet saying, yeah, this guy is fake is me. But when I was a child, man, I was all in. I was like, no, Dad, I think he's telling the truth. And my dad's like, I don't think that this guy's science is real. I think this is Star Trek fantasy science. This isn't real science, son. And I'm like, no, he's telling the truth. Those aliens are real. And he worked on the spaceships,
My dad was the same way. Didn't believe in anything paranormal or anything. He was a very, very pragmatic person.
Stuff like this. Is this Avro car? Is this the Avro car?
This is the a schematic for the Avro car. Yep.
Yes. My father loved stuff like this. Back in the day, for those unaware, you could get Popular Science magazine and they would show you things like this: space planes, weird experimental aircraft. And my father, being an aircraft mechanic, was intensely interested in all of this stuff. So we got Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, and a bunch of other science magazines just for this kind of stuff that Grider is showing us here. This sort of futuristic airplane kind of stuff,
Yeah, super fascinating. I mean, because that's one thing that I always thought is, okay, well, maybe Bob Lazar was given like a barium mill test. You know, in intelligence, sometimes they'll give you
Yeah.
disinformation or give you, yeah, to see if it flushes out the other side, see what you
Well,
do. And I always
yeah.
thought maybe they had like an Avrocar, like a replica, that they showed him to see what he did. And of course, he failed the test. And that's part of like, so I mean, getting to like explanations, if you want to get into that at some point, how to explain, or even, I guess possible explanations for how this, how Knapp has never said anything, or how
Well, one of the
Knapp continued to talk about the story. It's like,
one of the things that always struck me, we'll get back to that, but the red flags is that a lot of people don't know this, but George Knapp had this Sunday morning talk show, and he brings John Lear on, and John Lear talks about UFOs, and the ratings were like ridiculous. They went through the roof. And on one of Lear's appearances on that Sunday morning talk show, there's still copies of it on YouTube. He talks about a secret base inside of Area 51 where they have recovered flying saucers and they're back engineering them. But I think he said there were 6, not 9. But still, he said there was a secret base on a subset of Area 51 where they're back engineering these things. And a year later, Bob Lazar meets John Lear and then just so happens to get a job at the very top secret location that he talked about on George Knapp's show a year before. It's like, what are the odds, man? What are the odds?
John Lear was like, most of John Lear's stuff that he told on that show was all Paul Benowitz too. Like, or at least the majority of it was from his letters with Paul Benowitz.
So it came from really a roundabout way. That information came from Richard Doty, because Richard Doty was the one feeding Benowitz all that stuff.
Yep, the aviary. It all ties back to it, man. That's my theory.
To Richard Doty. Yeah, it does.
Richard Doty and Hal Puthoff and all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know too, but Richard Doty was also one of the people that was feeding Bill Moore information, and he and John Lear were like the modern day equivalent of, let's say, Elizondo and Greer. They were 2 leading figures talking about UFOs, but they hated each other because they both wanted to be the top dog. And George Knapp actually did a hit piece on Bill Moore stealing material from John Lear and others in the community that was false information. Basically, they labeled Bill Moore a disinformation agent, which I think is pretty funny.
Which he was, I think maybe even there's a possibility that Bill Moore, made some of the Majestic 12 documents. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about it, when I'm going back and like going through the newsletters, the old UFO club newsletters.
You always have to follow the money. The fact that this guy's selling like tons of books back in the day, this is pre-internet, of course. So the only information that you could get about aliens and UFOs came in the form of books. You got to follow the money and think like, would one of these people have just faked those documents to make a shit ton of money? What about today? Do people fake shit to make a shit ton of money? Of course they do. We catch them here all the time, So,
and it's like the Majestic 12 documents were sent to Jamie Shandera. I know that's not pronouncing it correctly. Shandera, maybe.
Yeah,
it was like Bill Moore's best friend. You know?
It just so happens that those documents get sent to the best friend of basically the leading UFO guy, one of the at least in the top 3, I guess it would be him, Stanton Friedman and Bill Cooper at the time, and maybe John Lear. Definitely in the top 5. Those, these groundbreaking documents that confirm everybody's speculation is true, that the government there really is a cover up. The government has aliens. They have flying saucers, and they're back engineering them. And this is all confirmed by those documents. You know what I thought when David Grush came out? I thought this guy's just like the MJ12 documents. He's just here to tell everybody, you're definitely right. All this stuff is true. But he had no evidence, so that's a problem. Yeah, and we just did a thing on this aviary documentary, which was great. Here's Falcon, Richard Doty.
Fantastic, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Falcon's definitely, yeah. But, is the aviary not just fantastic? I mean, it fills in all the gaps that like the Mirage movie did not. You know, I mean, it's like those two together, it's just perfect. And
I think
the
if
guy
if you want to
Digital
know about
Vortex is
UFOs,
coming out with a new one.
yeah,
You know,
we're gonna have him here as soon as he comes out. We're gonna do a watch party of the new one, and then I'm gonna have him here for an interview. He does a
I'm
great,
so
and you
jealous.
know, when I saw that aviary documentary, I was two things. 50% of me was pissed because I have a whole folder of a lot of the information that he shared in that, and I was planning on doing a big production of the aviary.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah, but then the other 50% of me was like, well, this guy did such a great job. Somebody needed to do that, and now I'm off the hook for that one. I don't have to. I could just send people that link because he did an amazing job of explaining all of that. And it's like a convoluted web. It's kind of hard to explain it all. He did a great job on that. What are we looking at
Yeah,
here?
but I mean,
this is
dude, there's so much more to be told, though. Like, there's so much more of the story to be told. I'm just, yeah, this is a book that I took some screenshots of off of archive.org. It's flying. If you go to archive.org and you type in flying saucer aircraft, it'll bring up, and I mean, it's got everything.
Yeah, there's quite a history of people trying to make these things work. You know, for a time, I wasted a hell of a lot of money buying a lot of like big drone motors and propellers trying to figure out how to make something round that I could sit in. I thought that would be awesome, but I could never get past the power to weight ratio. Like, it's just too heavy.
You know, it's coming soon, though. I mean, probably in the next 10 years, like, we're going to have, like, you know, recreational hovercraft, you know, where you're going to be able to hop on. It'll be like kind of like a motorcycle. I guarantee it. But,
well,
man,
David Wilcock, you know, he's going to build hover cars with free energy engine.
Oh, I bet. Oh, yeah. Him and Ashton Forbes should hook up. Yeah.
He's only been promising it for like 3 years now, but any day he's going to get funded, and then we'll have free energy powered hover cars, and you know, you won't even have to put fuel in it, and it'll power your whole house too. So there's that.
Dude, it's just
but
like,
no, I agree with you that I think that the
recycling
drone,
the same grift.
The drone, I don't believe that an anti-gravity kind of craft is going to be commercially available anytime in the next, I don't know, 100 years. But I do believe that some of these drone technologies and these new materials that are super lightweight and super strong are going to enable. I'm sure you've already seen. There's like some concept vehicles that look like a motorcycle, but it floats right off the ground. You know. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Absolutely.
So this is from archive.org, flying saucer aircraft.
Yeah, flying saucer aircraft. It'll be like secret projects. But right here is, okay, so Dr. Fector, he was involved in making, this is one thing that I forgot to mention too, that I didn't have in my notes at the top, is that Dr. Fector also, he built the electrical control system for what was at the time the largest the largest proton beam in the United States. So like, it's the same thing as Bob. You know how Bob always talked about, you know, like how he was involved in like making his own homemade or maybe it's a particle accelerator. I've got it right here.
Well, Bob Lazar lied and said he had a particle accelerator at his house, which is impossible. You can't have a particle accelerator in your house unless you have a house with, you know, miles and miles of yard you could bury it in or something. And George Knapp has said that lie so many times in public talks. Like, Bob Lazar had a particle accelerator in his bedroom. Like, no, that's you can't have a particle accelerator in your bedroom. You know, another red flag, I guess.
I always get these details mixed up. Is this a proton beam or a particle accelerator? Hell, I don't even know what a beaker looks like. I don't even know.
Yeah, it looks more like a proton beam device because a particle accelerator is always round and huge, you know? And it's
either way, this guy was like a legend, all right? Like, Dr. Fector literally could not have accomplished any more in his, I mean, he probably could have, but, you know, the guy, like, it would take the average person probably 5 lifetimes to accomplish what this man accomplished. I mean, just,
it seems like he was like an Elon Musk type brain, or like
he was also a supervisor at, like, he was in a supervisory role at Los Alamos. He also worked at Holloman Air Base. You know, he
So
worked
this
in all
is a
these
lot like
classified high positions.
just like Bob Lazar's story. Bob Lazar claimed
But
he was a
also,
senior staff
he would
level
be in a
physicist.
position to check Bob Lazar too, right? Like, think about it. Like, if you're George Knapp, this is my big thing. If you're George Knapp, how do you not turn to your father-in-law, to vet this guy, right? Or like, how does this conversation not happen? And does
Yeah.
that add credence to Bob Lazar? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, does that, I mean, what does that say? Like, well, I mean, there's two possibilities. There's a bunch of possibilities, but either he kept Bob Lazar away from his father-in-law, or his father-in-law knew about Bob Lazar, and they maybe interacted. But I mean, his father-in-law. Okay, so the clips that I showed at the beginning are at the end of the beginning, clip that I gave to you to play. That was his father-in-law 2 years before he passed away in 2001.
Yeah, it is suspicious.
The guy was sharp as a tack.
If you've got a father-in-law that's been that involved in high-level government projects and worked at Los Alamos and all this other stuff, why would you not bring him in? Or how about this? Here's another issue. A lot of people know I'll be rebroadcasting it this weekend. I once interviewed Stanton Friedman, and then I got to know him, and we talked on the phone many times. And one of the things that Stanton Friedman told me is Bob Lazar would never meet with a real physicist, because a real physicist would know right away that he wasn't a physicist. So why, if George Knapp has access to this incredible physicist with all these degrees and high-level clearances and incredible history, would he not sit Bob Lazar in front of him and make them have a conversation, like you said, for vetting purposes? Wouldn't this guy know if Bob Lazar, just like Stanton Friedman said, a real physicist could talk to Bob Lazar for 20 minutes and know that he was a bullshit artist? Why didn't he do that with this guy?
Yeah, and
the lie by omission.
There's one interview,
or maybe he did, Grider. Maybe he did, and his father-in-law told him that Bob Lazar was full of shit.
Or this is maybe this was my first theory. All right, my first when I finally came across this, and I sat back and I was like, wow, what did I just come across? What am I looking at here? My first thought was it was a proxy story where maybe the father-in-law wanted to tell his story, but it was still classified, maybe, or maybe he was 69 years old when Bob and Knapp came out with their story in 89. So I don't know, you're 69, you've had literally 5 friggin' lifetimes of achievement. Maybe you don't feel like becoming a media sensation. So maybe
crazy.
He went to Knapp and was like, hey, or maybe Knapp came to him and was like, hey, I think your story needs to be told. Why don't we use my friend Bob to kind of tell your story by proxy? And then we just swap out the classified, Nazi technology for UFO stuff. Because that's what everybody else does, right? When they want to pass through Dobser, is they just make it fictionalized alien stuff, right? I'm not saying that was the case back then. I guess maybe it was, but
yes,
right. Doesn't that kind of make sense?
Most of me seems to think that Bob Lazar was just an opportunist grifter who was desperate for money and bankrupt at the time that he came out with his story. He owed everybody money and he was broke as shit. He was unemployed, I think, It could be, but it also could be that the whole thing is just one big grift,
Have you heard what he did to Bigelow? What he did to Bigelow, where Bigelow was paying him, and and then Bigelow still trusted him afterwards. It's just I just don't.
For those unaware, Bob Lazar started a company with Robert Bigelow, and he basically, this is the way I remember the story, and I'm going from memory, so please forgive me if I'm off on details or specifics, but the gist of the story is that Bob Lazar told Bob Bigelow that he had pieces of the element 115 and they were going to start a company to exploit that material. And Bob Bigelow is paying him to have lab space and all this stuff. And Bob Lazar's storing old furniture and shit in there and junk. And as the story goes, what Bob Lazar was claiming was element 115 was actually airplane grease or something like that. airplane lubricant. That's what he was claiming was element 115. And so Bob Bigelow shut the whole thing down, as the story goes. But you can get,
but then he still trusted Bob, though.
They definitely started a company together. Well, yeah, he still believed Bob's story somehow. I don't know how after
he was
getting
still marketable, I
scammed.
guess.
Yeah,
Money.
Somebody's
I mean, I guess like,
that's an interesting aircraft right there.
that's the Dark Star. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that is really fascinating that's coming out. You know, there's a couple of pictures of like came out in Lockheed Martin. Here we go. I've got it right here. This is pretty cool. All right, so they tweeted this out this past week, and this is the picture on the left that they tweeted out. But on the left, but then I got it zoomed in right here. This winged UAV, and then you've got what? I've got the model numbers down here, but this is an RQ 170 Sentinel, and this is like one of the highest tech, or at least that we know of. There's an article in and I think it's Aviation Weekly.
This is a long flight drone, one of the newer models.
Yeah, this thing's pretty cool. Drone. And then I get these mixed
prowlers.
up, but one is like a wingman.
They look like prowlers.
One is like a wingman. Yeah, and then the other one's like a hypersonic missile. I get them mixed up, but one's like a UAV, kind of like buddy, where it's like a drone that protects, the fighter pilot. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we got some orbs, right here. There's some orbs up here too. For anybody that likes orbs,
of course,
I guess.
Yes.
Of
course. Hopefully they're the good orbs and not the blue ones, or is it the green ones are the bad guys? I forget.
I forget, but.
Yeah, Bob Lazar still selling signed posters from his website. And
He's
funny
coming out
story.
With a new documentary, you said.
Yes, and funny story, Grider. A lot of my audience knows this, but you may not know this. For years, I was a professional magician, and I did magic shows, stage shows. And one of the things that we did was sort of like floating ghosts over the audience. We would totally black out the whole, make it completely and totally dark and float these ghosts over the audience. And I was using glow-in-the-dark paint, but just from like Home Depot, and it was okay, but it wasn't great. And some magician friend of mine is like, "Oh, you got to get better. You could get much, much brighter, better glow-in-the-dark paint. I'll send you the link to where I get mine." And he sends me the link, and I look, and I'm like, United Nuclear, isn't that? Oh my God, it's Bob Lazar. And I bought he sells the best glow-in-the-dark paint. It's like 5 times or 3. It's at least 3 times brighter than the stuff you just buy at Home Depot. And he sold it in all different colors. So then we had, like blue tinted ghosts and orange tinted ghosts and red tinted ghosts that were glow in the dark. And I got the materials to make those from Bob Lazar's United Nuclear. So I guess he does serve some purpose,
Yeah, I mean, I know a couple of people got like posters from him. He has a really cool website. He also, sold some cool chemicals that, you could apparently you could give somebody and they would, never come around again. I think he got a lawsuit over that, right? Or he got arrested, right?
Well, no,
like 2014, or was that before that?
Yeah, I think that was before. I don't know. I know that the FBI raid was about. I always get these two confused: either thallium or thorium. That he sold somebody that allegedly killed his wife with it. That's what the FBI raid was about. They were there for the sales records in this murder case, and George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell lied to everybody. Oh, there were 40, 50 people there. No, there were like 10. And I talked to everybody that was there. And yes, there was a hazmat van and they went in first. But, when you got to place a warehouse that may be filled with dangerous chemicals, you have to be safe before you go in. So they send a hazmat guy in just to make sure the environment was safe for the other officers to go in. And they weren't there all day. They didn't rip apart the whole place like Knapp and Corbell said. That's just, I think that Corbell is a really shitty filmmaker. And so he didn't have a plot to that movie. And it seems very clear to me that there was no plot, you know? And so the FBI raid happens. And I think Corbell, being the opportunist that he is, just went, oh, we can end it on that because that's spooky. The FBI raided his business.
I had never heard that before about Corbell. Jeez, really? I mean, I thought he was an upstanding documentarian.
Oh God, this guy's the king.
Embellishing and telling.
He's the king of fake shit. Him and his fake pyramid spaceships and his fake flare triangle spaceships and
the flares,
jellyfish and the flares. It's just so stupid. And you know what? You know what's always just like ridiculous to me is that this guy gets caught faking shit every time he puts something out. It comes out, this is fake shit. And this isn't a UFO. This is balloons. This is flares. This is bokeh effect through the lens. It's never what he claims. You know, he's essentially claiming everything's aliens. It's never aliens. He gets caught faking shit constantly. Why is he a UFO expert on all the cable channels? Like
CIA, man, he's got to be funded by the, he's got to be funded by the deep state, right? I mean, that would be my theory.
He's a company man, and that could also explain why Corbell is getting all this government footage that nobody else gets. You know, I like to joke, like, sign me up. You know, I want to call the Pentagon and go, can I get some of those UFO videos that keep getting leaked to Jeremy Corbell so I can make some money too? Like,
I've got the hookup, man. I mean, you know that I shot like a bunch of rounds. I shot a bunch of illumination rounds in Afghanistan. I got a bunch of buddies that are still in artillery. They're in like the heyday of their career or the twilight of their career.
Get me some footage because we got
dude, if you want some orbs, man.
Do you know about Griff Month,
man?
We're gonna have Griff Month coming.
We'll be doing the show from a yacht, all right? Yacht money is what we'll be making, all right? Forget Greer, me and you, man.
We're definitely going to
sitting on the beach.
We're definitely going to have Griff Month. I'm going to try a social experiment in which I become a UFO grifter for 1 month, and not just UFOs, ghosts, aliens.
We'll do it all.
I got Bigfoot. I got a 10-foot tall Bigfoot prop costume. I got all kinds of shit, and I'm pulling it all out for Griff Month. And we're going to put out all these videos.
CE5 events? Wait, so we're going to do CE5 events?
Absolutely. Okay. I got some Chinese lanterns. Absolutely.
Have you seen that recent CE5 video that came out from Colorado? I actually made a side-by-side of it. It's pretty interesting. It's like
no, I don't think I've seen that.
It's kind of like a sports event. All right. Can you hear the sound?
No. You might have to turn it up. Yeah, I think. Oh, I did see this, and I think it's birds. I think it's flapping birds.
100% birds. Yeah, and but you have a lady sitting there the whole time telling you, "Oh well."
Oh, it's definitely not birds. Yeah,
it's definitely not birds. Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, send me a link to the source video because I would like to put it in a video editor and zoom in on it, and I believe it'll show. I did it quickly before, but I never finished. You know, just to satisfy my own mind because I remember as soon as she said it's not birds, I'm like, the fuck it ain't birds, man. I can see the flapping almost, and I'm half blind.
Yeah. Hey, so I shared my screen again. If you want to.
Oh yeah, I put it in a video editor and I zoomed in on it, and you can clearly see the movement of the flapping bird's wings. I think,
and then that's a satellite right there. But I tell you what's going to happen is like they're going to shine one of these planes, flying over, and
look, that's a flock of ducks. That's a flock of ducks or something.
No, that's a TR-3B right there. That's a TR-3B on the left. Yeah,
I thought it was pyramid spaceships because we're in green. So,
it's that triangular 29 palms UFO right there. You see that right there? That's 29 palms. See it?
Oh, it's stupid.
It's transformative.
Yeah, you know what? I can't tell you.
TR-3B right there.
The reason that I'm so good at spotting birds in grainy ass videos is because I can't tell you the number of crazy people who have emailed me and sent me, they're like, no, it's definitely alien spaceships. And I'm like, dude, I can see the flapping. It's a flock of birds. And people are adamant. They're like, it's definitely not birds. You don't know what you're talking about. Some expert you are. I'm like, yeah, all I know is I load it in a video editor and zoom in on it, and you can see the flapping, you know? It's very distinctive.
All right.
But you don't know
do you
what
want to
was
see
going on
something
with this
embarrassing
event,
real
too.
quick?
They might, you don't know what's going on with this event. They might have been charging people for this event, and then also they're making money putting this video out, monetized views, probably, you know?
I mean, they should be. Yeah, I mean, they had like an announcer, right? You know, they had to pay that person to get up there on the loudspeaker and tell people what they were seeing. I mean, they better be charged for it. You know, that's a
Definitely,
business. But
definitely aliens.
oh man, you know, and you know what? Greer said the same thing during that CE5 event at Vero Beach, where he's like, "That's definitely not flares. You know, definitely put your night scopes away." All right, so here's tell me what you think that is. All right. All right, this is from the ISS live feed. I think yeah, I don't have a date on that, but what do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A tether, something tethered? Maybe. I don't know.
Hold on, I've got a longer video.
Kind of hard to tell from. All right, this is a view from the ISS. Is there some kind of lighted object?
My God.
You did it again. Some kind of lighted object. I don't know. It looks like it's got a trail behind it. I like how most of the NASA UFOs, they just say it's ice, though, right? Ice particle glistening in
All
the
right,
sun.
right here. There we
know.
go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Could be anything. Looks lighted, though.
Yeah. You can see like they're moving the camera. They're, you know, up to pan up with it. You can see on the bottom, that's the sunrise, the earthrise, or the, you know, let's see. I spent like 6 months watching this stuff, watching these. There it is again.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah. It took me about 6 months to figure out what it is, but it's the moon. It's the moon. Yeah, that's the moon.
That's funny. So it's just the moon. That's funny. Hey,
dude, I thought for sure that I was that.
Should have said that. We could have used this for Griff Month.
Dude, I mean, I thought for sure that NASA
Alien
was like
invaders.
giving me disclosure.
Alien invaders.
Look at it, like,
scout ship haunts the ISS.
I mean, does that look like the moon? You know?
No, it looks too small.
See how it see how it came forward like that?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, look at that.
Goes to show you how easily your eyes can fool you, especially in the depth of blackness of space. Maybe, you know, I'm sure it appears differently.
That's one thing that I wanted to ask you. Is like, how long, or not how long, but how can we possibly trust anything that we see, any video of any sighting ever again, right? With technology, with drone technology, with, you know, AI and stuff like that. Like, how can we take any videotaped sighting seriously ever again?
Well, you know, one of the things you always have to keep in mind is that the grifters will use any available methods. You know, back in the day, they would hang up models between strings and take pictures of stuff. And then somebody figured out that you could like cut out a picture of a UFO and put it onto the negative of like a mountain scene, and it would look like a UFO above a mountain, you know. And
like Billy Meyer.
And people have already exploited AI technology. Remember, an early case is these idiots from Third Phase were telling people that they had pictures of the Roswell crash, and the fingers were all fucked up. So I knew right away that if the fingers of the people are all screwed up, that's because the AIs at the time were having trouble with fingers and toes. So we knew right away this is an AI photo. They made probably $1,000 on that video. So the grifters, what is it that we're looking at here?
Oh, this I just posted up. It's just some Bob Lazar related documents for anybody that wants to screenshot them. Here's like a statement of financial debt that he owed at one point. Here's what is it? Yeah, this shows that he put down that he was an electrical engineer when when he was
Yeah,
21
and
years old.
there's also documents where they ask him his last grade completed, and he says 12. So,
Oh wow! And then right here is shows that he worked for Bigelow in 1990. Right here.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Zeta Reticuli 2 Inc. That was the name of the corporation.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
pretty
there's some documents.
crazy,
I mean,
yeah.
look, it's Gene Huff, Robert T. Bigelow, Pamela J. Boucher, and Lazar. Yeah, they were a part of this Zeta Reticuli 2 Incorporated.
Yeah, it
So I
didn't
don't know.
last.
So like,
It didn't last very long. I think Bigelow figured out that he was getting scammed and just, kind of bellied the thing. Kind of dropped the whole thing. But interestingly, you're right. I think he still believed Lazar's story, though. And who knows? Lazar could have told him, "Well, I had the real element 115, but the men in black came and stole it back from me," or some other bullshit.
I forget. I mean, yeah,
Oh,
guys like
that's
him just
not.
keep coming out with stories.
That's another thing, Grider. One of the big red flags to me is Bob Lazar in his story said that they performed every known scientific test on the element 115 material, which would mean that he should know what the isotopic ratios are for the so-called stable version that he worked with. So he should be able to make it if he knows the ratios, but he has never been able to reproduce the stable version of it, which, God forbid you ask somebody for proof. And then we've got George Knapp, who claimed he knows where the element 115 is buried, and someday he's going to dig it up. Have you seen that stuff?
yeah,
That's
like
pretty
Jimmy Hoffa's
funny.
body. Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
buried with Jimmy Hoffa's body.
I know exactly where that element 115 stuff is, and someday I'm gonna dig it up. I always forget in my there's Corbell. I always forget.
Have you ever met? Sorry.
I always forget where I keep those clips, but I have clips of him talking about the element 115. I'll try to find it while we're talking. And go ahead with your question.
Oh, I can hold on here. I can search right now, and then what I'll do is I'll send you over a link. Because I've got the transcript right here. Hold on, let me pull up the Lazar transcript. What do you want? Element 115? 115.
Well, no, I have a video clip I have a video clip somewhere here.
Okay, you've already got it clipped out.
Yeah,
Okay.
of George Knapp talking about the element 115 and how,
Have you ever met?
Me and all my friends are in a cult. I hang my posters on the couch because I'm in a cult. Yes, a cult.
I'm sorry, that was not the right clip, but that's funny anyway.
Dude, I don't know what that was.
That was at UFO Joe playing the drums, and he's in a cult.
What do you think about Jeremy Reese or Jeremy? Maybe it's
Jeremy
Rice.
I'm very friendly with him. I've known him for years, and his site Bob Lazar Debunked was one of the first things that kind of woke me up to like, oh, maybe this story isn't what.
Say it's Bob Lazar Debunked.
Yeah, I don't know if he still has
I
it.
saw him on Danny Jones, and he was fantastic. The guy's a
Yeah.
physicist, Yeah, so it was great hearing. I'm gonna check out that website.
Well, that's one of those things that, like, if you talk to somebody that's a real scientist, he can blow holes in all of these, fake stories because they know science. Oh, wait, I found it. Let me I have two clips of, So there's this famous clip of George Knapp claiming that he knows exactly where the element 115 is, and someday he's going to dig it up. Let's take a look at that, and this is fair use.
What folks are doing, and anti-gravity propulsion is something they want very badly. Bob said that the key to it was this element 115. He had a piece of it. I saw it. In fact, he had a little experiment they did with what's called a cloud chamber, where they had, it looked to me like light. They had a piece of this 115 in this chamber. They put some smoke in it, and it seemed, and then had a beam of light through it, and the light bent. Bob, at one point, when he thought he was going to die, had this piece of 115 in it was in a lead casing, in a disc-shaped casing, and he had it in front of a particle accelerator at his house, and he had the accelerator on, and all he had to do was flip a button. If this stuff was real, as he described it, flipping that button would hit it with, I don't know, it's protons or electrons, whatever it was, that would make it explode, an annihilation that would have left a great big hole in Las Vegas. And he had that piece. I saw the experiment. What happened to it, that's a story for another time. It's in a spot now where nobody could get to it, but it's still there. One of these days, maybe after Bob's gone, I'll go dig it up.
Yeah. So George Knapp knows where the smoking gun, 100% smoking gun proof of alien visitation on Earth is buried, but he can't show it to us yet. You know, it's so childish and stupid, you know? It's just like a child on a playground telling all the other kids that they have a laser gun, but I can't show it to you, you know?
How old is Bob Lazar? That's one thing that I was thinking. Like, he's got to be in his 60s, right? Or is he late 50s?
No, I think he's in his 60s by now. I don't know what his birth date is off the top of my head. I'll see
1958.
If I can.
Yeah, it's 1958. So that's 65. Wow, yeah. So he's getting up there, right?
Yeah,
66
he's
maybe.
doing his last cash in with this latest new documentary, and they went all out. There's supposed to be a virtual reality S4 that you can walk through and see the spaceships and shit. And apparently there's some bad blood between Corbell and Knapp and this other filmmaker, and therefore Bob as well. Like, they didn't want him to work with that guy. They wanted to do another thing with them because they, you know, the money, right? And but apparently that filmmaker, I've been told that filmmaker offered Bob like huge money to do this new documentary. So we'll see what happens, but I predict that it's going to be another bullshit fest, just another retelling of the story, but maybe do it better production-wise and story-wise and video-wise than Corbell did it. Because I don't know, for all Corbell's bragging and all of his expensive equipment, I think he's a shitty filmmaker, you know? It's like, hey, let's look at me sitting on my toilet talking on my cell phone through half this movie. Like that. But I know why he did that.
Check the private chat real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, check the private chat. Tell me what you think. Yeah,
Wendell
I mean,
Stevens.
Absolutely. And he was kind of a crappy artist too. You know, before that too, it's like the guy did like a Sharon Tate, you know, art exhibit. He, you know, he had like naked coffee house, like, I don't even know what you would call him. I guess like, I mean, I don't even know, like an art exhibit, but it was just naked people standing around. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
and I don't know. There's at least one person on Twitter that's really not a fan of Knapp and Corbell that claims those art exhibits were satanic in nature. And if you look at some of that art, it looks kind of demonic and satanic to me. He claims that Corbell and his wife or girlfriend are Satan worshipers. I don't know if that's true, but what I get from Corbell is that he was a rich, spoiled kid that never had a real job. Because, you know, think about this. In your real life, do you know anybody that has been a yoga instructor, an MMA fighter, a visual artist, a jujitsu instructor?
Steven Seagal.
And also a filmmaker. You know, like that just
Seagal.
Screams rich, spoiled kid or trust fund kid. You know, I don't know. I spent a long time in the entertainment business, and there's a lot of rich trust fund kids in the entertainment business because they don't need the money, so they just get interested in something, like, oh, I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to be a director, or whatever, a musician or songwriter. There's a lot of people like that, and Corbell strikes me as one of those rich trust fund kids that never really had a real job, just did whatever their hobby was full time,
My favorite part about the old Corbell is like how he would talk in this soft voice, like he was finessing the words out of his mouth, and he was very, very, very poignant, in his diction, and he would, talk to you like we were on a breeze in a cloud, and
Yeah. Oh, and one of the other things that I found really incredible about that clip we just played, Grider, think about this. So basically, Bob Lazar told him that he was going to put that element 115 into a particle accelerator and blow a huge hole in the city of Las Vegas. When you call the cops or somebody, you're just going to let your friend blow up half of Las Vegas and kill all these?
Yeah, I mean, they're scientists,
It's so stupid. I found another short clip of George Knapp on this weird girl show, and it's so funny. Like, I don't know how she got him for a long form interview, but okay. Anyway, let me share that with you because this one's interesting as well.
And in the Jeremy Corbell documentary about Bob Lazar, there is an allusion that Bob still has an element 115. Does he really have an element 115?
Well, I can tell you that he did have it because I saw it. I was at his house. He had it it was a pewter sort of a device that he had created to sort of protect it from unwanted rays and things and particles. And it was in his house. He took it out one time and they did an experiment called a cloud chamber experiment in which they could show that this element 115 affected gravity. It bent light, in essence. He thought it was real. His friends thought it was real. The government seems to have thought it was real because they came looking for it a bunch of times. They came looking a bunch of times. And, if I believe that Bob has put that away somewhere in a place where nobody's going to find it unless he wants to break it out. I've tried to convince him that he should, but I think he probably sees that as his insurance policy that keeps him alive, because there have been threats both against him and against me and likely against Jeremy Corbell.
Yeah, Bob has the smoking gun evidence that his entire whole story is 100% true, but he can't show it to us. This is childish to me, just childish.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you have to admit though, he's a bit smoother than like the modern day grifters that we have, where they have an army of people just behind, ready to dox you and ready to attack you. Like think about how somebody like I don't know. Ashton Forbes, he runs his movement like a fascist cult general,
like a cult leader.
At least, at least Bob Lazar was kind of the friendly guy. Like he didn't try to create a cult. You have to give him props for that. I guess
one of the interesting things, and I heard this from several people, so I believed it, is that Bob Lazar did not work the UFO circuit. He got offered pretty good money to go talk at UFO conferences. He never did that. But what a lot of people don't know is that Bob Lazar was going for the big money, and he thought it was like stupid to go talk at a UFO conference for a couple $1,000s, 25 times a year. What he was going for, him and Gene Huff wrote a screenplay, and they were trying to sell his story to Hollywood for millions of dollars. And there were several false starts where people were going to make the Bob Lazar Hollywood story, but it fell apart. And one time it got a director and I can't remember the film company, but there was like announced in the trade publications that they were in negotiations to acquire the rights to the Bob Lazar story, and they'd be producing it, and it'd be a multi-million-dollar film, but it fell apart. And somewhere, some people have copies of that Hollywood screenplay. And one of the interesting things is, in that Hollywood screenplay, the men in black come and steal the element 115 away from him at his house. And isn't it interesting that in the documentary, the very same plot device is used? Like, oh, there's an FBI raid. They're here to steal back the element 115. And I know for a fact that Jeremy Corbell has a copy of that screenplay. So I always found that suspicious, you know? What are we looking at here? This Sunday, listening party, speaker panel, Bill Moore's infamous 1989 MUFON speech. I think we might have lost Grider. 1 second here. I saw your notes in the private chat. Oh, yeah, we lost our guest. This happens. The reason that he is not appearing on video is because his internet connection is kind of sketchy. So let's hope he'll just rejoin us here. I will send him a message. I'll just send a message. You can rejoin with the same link. Maybe he needs to reboot his phone, or I'm not sure what's going on. In the meantime, we want to thank a kind and generous benefactor, Lucas Bachman, who says old CRT TV is electron accelerator. On household particle accelerator, look up Betatron. Michio Kaku, as a teen, used 182 kilograms of steel plus 35 kilometers of copper wire, made a Bellaton accelerator in his mother's garage. Well, that may be possible, but I don't think that Bob Lazar had a particle accelerator in his bedroom. Let's just leave it at that. But we thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. For those unaware, we're a viewer-supported show, and we appreciate your kindness, generosity, and support. And we thank all of you, including Lucas Bachman here, very kind and generous $10 super chat. We read every single one. Thank you, Mr. Bachman, for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. I think we may get our guest. We may get our guest back here. Are you back?
About that. Yeah, sorry about that. My dog ran into the. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, what about Professor Bob Kringle then? He confirmed Bob's story. Well, what you may not be aware of is that he later said, I never said that. Jeremy Corbell lied about what Kringle said.
Okay,
And,
so
well,
you
you
were talking about how you were talking about how Bob said, oh heck, I'm sorry, man, I got like a little bit of a lag, maybe.
I don't know, sounds fine to me.
Here, hold on, let me reset.
Sure. Yeah, it's the men in black. They're trying to stop you because you're a disinformation agent, Grider. That's what it is. Troll says, hey, Stephen, I subscribed to you on Twitch today by a different handle and have a dumb question. You don't have to subscribe every month, do you? Yes. For those who are Twitch subscribers, you have to do it every month. It's to give me the $5 or whatever it is. And interestingly, I haven't even been on Twitch. I haven't even checked in with our channel there. Hopefully, though, you have gotten us. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the login credentials. Oh, Truth Seeker Show. It's twitch.tv/Truth Seeker Show. Yeah, we're broadcasting on Twitch right now. That's interesting. So you do have to do it every month. You have to do that. Oh, Grider's back. Maybe that'll be better now.
Gotcha.
All right. You got to get better internet, maybe? I don't know. Right? But
I got to move to a better part of the earth.
Well, I understand, like at the cabin, when I first got the internet there, it was fine. And I could even stream from there. But then what happened is a bunch of other neighbors signed up for internet. And I don't know if it's all on a shared line, because it seemed like the more people signed up for the internet in the area that my cabin is in, the shittier it got. Al Garay is in the Twitch.
Yeah, man, I got to get Starlink is what I got to do.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get that at my new cabin, but I don't know. Half of me doesn't want the internet at the new cabin. because the new cabin's going to be pretty rustic, you know, like candles and oil lamps and a wood stove and just enough power for lights and a laptop, but that's it. And I kind of like that disconnected feeling while I'm over there. I mean, I have a phone, but you know, it's just not good to be so connected all the time. It's good to have a place that you can unplug. So I may leave it without it, but there is the possibility of Starlink there. That, in fact, that's probably my only hope of getting internet there. It's miles from any like power lines or anything like that. I doubt there's any other way to get internet there.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody's asked me if I have a
that's what
MySpace page for the show. No, I haven't had a MySpace page since the 2000s or early 2000s, maybe. Right? When did I don't know when MySpace ended.
2005, maybe it's the last time I heard about MySpace.
I loved MySpace. I liked it better than Facebook. Yeah.
They had it really good for music, you know, like that, and like, you know, you were able to
promote
your favorite artists.
Yeah, I promoted my music there to the tune of like just ridiculousness. And
were you like industrial techno? Like I'm assuming maybe like I don't know, like some type of electronic.
Yeah,
Nice.
like electronic music. So I would promote our live appearances through MySpace, and it was crazy to me that we could like go to New York City and not know anybody, and we'd have, you know, 100 people show up or something, and they were all coming from MySpace. And then I would mail off, this is how long ago it was, I would mail off CDs every week from MySpace. Like we'd have promos like, oh, if you buy this album, we'll give you the remix album for free. And so every week I was running to the post office to mail all these people from MySpace CDs. MySpace was awesome. It was better to me than Facebook. And I never understood how Facebook became so dominant. It's like, this is just a different version of MySpace. That's all this is, right? How did it become?
Yeah, well, I mean, college, you know, like, I mean, you know, because that's how it started out, is that you could only use Facebook if you were a college student. And that's how I first started using it, because I went to college in 2006.
Well, that was good for like looking up the other students in your school, right? Like checking out the hotties.
Yeah. Hey, so I found a clip with Kringle. I sent it to the private chat, and I've got it time-stamped right in. I mean, I don't know if that question was already answered about Kringle, but this is a pretty good one. It's from a pretty kind of an unknown Jeremy Corbell presentation that he did on Bob Lazar in 2018. I know Jeremy Corbell's not, you know.
Sure. But what I recall, and I may be incorrect, is that everything that he says in this presentation was disputed by Kringle later when another researcher got to him by the name of Signals Intelligence. But yeah, let's go through the clip.
Brave individual who was willing to talk to me on the record about working with Bob Lazar at Los Alamos in scientific capacity, being in briefings, classified briefings, which, by the way, the janitors are not invited to, the highly technical classified briefings.
Yeah, at one time this was his big proof.
It was Dr. Robert Kringle. I have all of his all of his paperwork from all the contracts that he did during that time period at multitude of bases, including Los Alamos. During that time, Dr. Kringle's telling the truth. I can prove it.
What was your impression of what Bob was doing at Los Alamos in the 80s?
I didn't know what he was up to any more than he knew what I was up to.
But you did know that he was a physicist.
Yes.
And that was very clear to you, that he was a physicist at Los Alamos and not, again, like the janitor.
Right.
So he worked there. And he went on record.
So was Corbell doing, like...
Bob was the jet car guy. He was a rock star.
Was he kind of faking the audio or what?
I remember Bob.
Well, here, I'm finding the other part of the story. So let me share this tab. And this is from Signals Intelligence, who is one of those researchers that is just ridiculous. He interviewed a bunch of people that worked at Los Alamos who all said that Bob Lazar was never a scientist. He was a low-level electronics technician. And so here is Corbell saying, I finally got an interview with the guy that wrote the article 2 weeks ago. So the guy, Terry English, finally, after all this time, he called me back and he said, put him in a movie. And I said, look, at this point, Bob Lazar is a physicist at Los Alamos. So how did you base that? You're writing a paper. And he goes, yeah. So Terry England was the guy who wrote that article about Bob Lazar in the local newspaper. And here, did you ever follow up or actually verify claims that he was a physicist? Or did you just take it at face value? And so Corbell's caught lying here, because Corbell basically said that this newspaper writer verified that Bob was a scientist at Los Alamos and all this stuff. And that's not the case.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. I don't remember saying that. It's possible, but I don't remember saying that because I don't remember doing it. So the author says, in Jeremy Corbell's recent documentary, he says he talked to you and you told him that you had confirmed that Bob was a physicist. Author said that didn't happen. And so there's some other portion of this. This researcher identified 2 former lab employees who worked directly with Bob, and he was able to speak to what they did at Los Alamos and the circumstances of his departure. The physicist name, this physicist is John Farmer, and then Joe Vianetti. But John Farmer says, yes, he remembers Bob Lazar. The author says, I'm trying to verify that he actually was a physicist working on the polarized proton project. John, who is a physicist, said, no, he was not a physicist to the best of my knowledge. Could you tell me what role you remember him having? John says, well, when I was at Los Alamos at the lab working, he did some electrical technician work that I'm aware of. There was no reference to him ever having a background in physics. If he does, he should be able to put forth his degree credentials wherever they're from. The author says, could you tell me a little bit about what kind of work he could have done? And John, the physicist, says, possibly some electronics associated with that project he was working in support of. I mean, it could be. I'm just saying that is anything related to what he's claiming or what he may have done. But as an example of what a support electrical tech would be if you were setting up an experiment and you needed to have an interface module to go between detectors that were being used, interfacing it to a computer and putting that system together in the cabling. That would be an example. Not that what he may have done, but what a support tech would do. And then John says, yes, you have to have a clearance badge to be able to get into the site where I worked. So the author says, so he would have had clearance. And John says, I don't know the status of any clearances he would have had, but you did have to show your ID badge to get access to the site. The author asks, did you have any experience with him? What was your read on him? And John says he was there for a limited period of time. He didn't overly impress me as being the sharpest knife in the drawer or anything like that. That's, yeah. And then he followed up with this person and he said, when he worked for my section, I can't even remember what length of time, but it wasn't too long. But I can't make any comment of what happened after he wasn't working with us. What I can say is, I mean, myself and the other technician that were working with me. And he says, but he worked as an electrical technician in his capacity in your lab. And this physicist says, yeah, that's correct. So maybe I'm remembering this. I thought that Krengle had said, no, Corbell got it wrong, or whatever, but it just occurring to me now that what it looks like is that Signals Intelligence found multiple people that actually worked at Los Alamos with Bob Lazar, and they all say that he was never a physicist. He was a low-level electronics technician.
And they also say that he owed a lot of people money, and he kind of left town. Yeah.
Yeah. And this person, Henry, who is another scientist there, the only thing I remember ever really hearing was, the guy he didn't do anything while he was there, apparently. And I know that was what John thought, that he was a complete waste of time. And then Henry says, I remember at the lab, there were a number of people that left under similar circumstances. They thought that it would be okay. There would be people that seemed to think that because the government was paying for it, that it was okay. So this scientist says that Bob Lazar got fired for basically misuse of lab resources. He was using the telephones to call long distance numbers all over the world, and he didn't have authorization to do that. So that's pretty interesting.
I just found another one too. It's Mark Farmer did an interview with an anonymous coworker in 1996.
This is Earl Hoffman, who's a physicist, says, my recollection that he was a technician, which would not be a physicist. I'm sure he wasn't a physicist, because if he was, I would have known him because I was a physicist. And let me back up just a little bit. He was at Unintelligible. We called it, that was the accelerator, when I knew about him, and he was off in an adjacent building, which is a little bit separated from the others. I knew that he was there because of his weird name, because when we fired the car up, you could hear it all over town. That's for miles. And I think I've never met him. I would have put quite a bit of money on whether he was a physicist or not. And I would say no. I think he was a technician of some sort, but I couldn't even tell you what kind of technician. Another physicist who had an especially important reason to know Bob is Richard Evans Mishka. And this person said, Mishka said, oh, so he wasn't actually a lab employee. Okay, yeah, I could say definitely. I served in management during that period. And if he had been a physicist, I would have hired him. So that is, I can say, definitely not credible. Oh, and here's the Kringle part.
Dude, here's something cool too. Okay.
Yeah, let's get to the Kringle part. So we heard what Corbell said Kringle said. Is that just repeating that? I don't know. Yeah, so,
okay, so
it's just refuting. So basically, this signals intelligence talked to like 5 different people that all worked at the lab at the time, and everybody said he wasn't a physicist. He was a low-level electronics technician. So we've got one guy, Kringle, that Corbell found said, oh, yeah, he was definitely a physicist. And what was Kringle's proof he was a physicist? Well, he had a lab coat and a pocket protector, and he was in some of the meetings. That's not proof he was a physicist. And this person, Signals Intelligence, found at least 5 sources that all say he wasn't a physicist. So if we go by the standards of evidence, Signals Intelligence wins.
Here's a fascinating thing that somebody, okay, so this guy, Mark Farmer, found somebody back in 1996 and asked him if apparently Bob Lazar owed this guy a bunch of money. I think like a couple $1,000s when he left town to go to Vegas. Apparently he left town, you know, like a robber trying to escape into the night. And so this guy, Mark Farmer, says, oh, okay, did he ever pay you back? And this guy responds, he says, well, that's kind of a strange story. Yes, I got paid. I was repaid about a year ago. And it was at the height of all of this, that where people were calling me, and I was told that he had a big deal for a film, and people were starting to dig into his past and find out whether he was whether he was on the level or not. And after I had talked to several of these people, a check showed up in the mail not too much longer after the last guy I talked to. So apparently I think he was a little bit nervous about me speaking with these folks. And this is from the site, theotherhand.org.
He didn't want this guy telling everybody that he was a deadbeat that owed everybody money and was borrowing money off of everybody, apparently. Right?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Man, I just wonder why the films crashed. Like, why did they crash and burn like they did? I mean, I'm shocked that one didn't get made.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. Like, you know, I don't know if you know anything about Hollywood. They're always like greenlighting projects, and then the projects don't make it sometimes. So it could be as simple as that. Yeah, I don't really know. And I saw your private messages, Wendell Stevens Dark. You know, I was one of the original people that reported on Wendell Stevens' troubled history. So, yeah, I know all about that. Wendell Stevens was he was a convicted child predator with multiple underage victims and did jail time. And I always thought it was interesting that the UFO community, including UFO conference organizers, knew about that. And then they helped him get work as a UFO speaker after he got out of prison for molesting little girls.
Yeah, he actually hosted that. right? Because he did prison time in like the 80s, right? So he
Mhm.
got out and held the first like UFO Congress, right? And this is where my interest comes in, all right? So you're familiar with Charles, the prison whistleblower that I held a space for, the Doty quote unquote, that whole big mess. Well, we started to
Yes.
look into I started, and I got to be really careful about what I say, just because it is a sensitive topic. But basically, I got onto the Blue Planet Project. Are you familiar with that? It's kind of a Serpo canon storyline that was written.
I'm vaguely familiar with that.
It's basically Serpo on steroids, and it was allegedly authored at the 1991 Wendell Stevens ran UFO World Congress in Tucson. This is when this Blue Planet Project was authored, and it was allegedly authored by a man named Jefferson Souza. And this guy, Jefferson Souza, his real name is allegedly Richard Romero, who was a interstate pedophile, kidnapping, like horrible person. And this guy would go around, this guy, Richard Romero, would go around the country using like claims of being connected to the Alien Council and Serpo and the Vegans, and would use like the story, the Blue Planet Project, to kind of mystify kids and on chat rooms on AOL, and allowing them to like basically use it as like, I mean, I don't know, would use it in the course of like victimizing these kids.
Grooming.
And multiple kids would actually end up trying to run away with him. And that's where he got caught with a boy, a 12-year-old boy down in like Tennessee, who was trying to run away with him. And then he had another one. I mean, it was just a nightmare. The guy was a nightmare. But this guy would use ufology to would basically use like his canon that he created, the Blue Planet Project, which I think there had to have been more than one author.
Did you know Did you know Jan Harzan, when he showed up to have sex with who he thought was a 13-year-old girl? I think it was a 13-year-old girl. He was wearing a MUFON shirt.
Yeah. Dude, it's like what the hell was going on back in the 90s, dude? And like, what I want to know is who else was there at that 91 conference? Because like
on Wendell Stevens, I heard this story that like Wendell Stevens, had like a pool, like an in-ground pool in his backyard, and this person that was supposed to be working on some kind of project with him went to visit him at his house. And he got there, and Wendell Stevens was in the backyard. So he comes and answers the door. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I have some friends over. Come to the backyard." And he goes to the backyard, and there's all these like 12-year-old girls. There's like 8 or 10 12-year-old girls in Wendell Stevens' pool. And he immediately was like looking around like, there's no adults here. It's just you and these girls. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, they're neighbors, friends and stuff." And he was skeeved out, and he left, and then later found out that Wendell was a predator. It's just gross.
I mean, dude, like how just like how pervasive was this?
I don't know. Like it was pretty pervasive, and we've shown that there's many predators in UFO circles. And one of the reasons I think that is because it's easy money, and they can't get like jobs other than at McDonald's. So you'll find, if you do enough research, you'll find that many so-called whistleblowers are criminals, and they just tell tales. No. Or they're victims, yeah. But there's a lot of
victims, which is like
there's that are criminals, especially of a sexual nature, because that stigma. Like, who's going to hire somebody that molested children? Not many people. Do you know what I mean? So they need money, and a lot of people have cashed in on this. Like Kerry Cassidy used a court-martialed child predator that she knew was a court-martialed child predator. Same for David Wilcock. He was interviewing a court-martialed child predator who was telling them secret space stories, and they were all making money off of this guy, knowing, I believe they knew, that he was a child predator. But like, hey, he's going to supply alien stories to sell our following. He'll get some money. It's all good, right? Who cares if
It's
the
so,
guy?
dude. That's so. I mean, that's so. Like, think about that. Like, it's like they're taking advantage of people's
Yeah, it's the
like
dark
wonder.
side.
You know, of like
This
people's
is
curiosity, man. People's like that's the stuff that makes us like makes us like stay in touch with like who we are deep down. Is like our ability to like be curious and be excited about things and have
yeah.
wonder
This
still. Feel like a child. And people like use that to victimize. It's so, dude, it's just so fucked up.
Yeah, there's a lot of
It's
dark
so
stuff,
messed up.
and I don't know if you saw, but we showed a breakdown of this Charles McNeil, corruption of minors ×2, conspiracy 4 counts,
Yeah, but-
theft by receiving 4, unauthorized use of a car 2 counts.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
That's just 2003. Then he's got arrests in 2005, 2007, 2009,
Guy's horrible.
2010,
Yeah.
2012. I haven't done
You
it
know
yet,
that-
but I'm going to do a separate video just about that guy because I needed some time to like. He's got a YouTube channel where he's like behind glass in prison telling alien stories.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cut some of that together, and then I'm going to show this huge breakdown that we have here, courtesy of a friend that shows all of his criminal history. And I was told that he's basically, that dude is scamming people to get money so that he could like buy ramen noodles from the jail thing and snacks.
We don't know
and
that.
stuff.
Like, I don't know, but I do know one thing is that
I've been told that by multiple
There's-
people, and there's multiple women. He's targeting women in the UFO community.
absolutely.
He's
Absolutely.
sweet talking
He's
them
targeting
like,
women,
oh,
yeah.
I don't have any
Yeah.
money, and the food here is horrible. I need to get some like stuff at this. If you put money on his account, he'll be able to buy stuff at the. I guess they have a prison store. I don't know how this works.
They have a
I've never been in
commissary. Yeah,
prison.
the guy's a scumbag. But also one thing to keep in mind too is that there's a very high likelihood that guy Charles. Fuck! I shouldn't have said this. There's a very. I should just mute my mic. There's a very high likelihood that he may have been a victim of somebody connected to the Blue Planet Project, and that's all that I'll say.
Wow, that's interesting. And I think
look into
it's pretty funny that Doty was like co-signing this guy. Oh yeah, he's legit. I had a briefing about him. And then Doty finds out he was in prison and he just drops out of the space. Right? Isn't that what happened?
Yeah. But then he came back and like Doty was back in a space with him that was hosted by Maze.
Can you send me a link?
Maze
Can
and
you send me a link to that space, or is that gone? Did somebody take it down?
I think it's still there. Yeah. But I mean, like me and him have each other blocked. Like we had it out, a while back because I'm like, dude, like I don't want anything to do with you. Stop talking about me. Like I barely talked about him after this, that space. Like I took the majority of the flack from that, but I didn't want anything to do with him. And like I was nice about it. Like I was not nice.
Well, listen,
cordial,
I don't blame anybody for holding a space and letting a guy who claims that he's got all this insider knowledge talk. But once you know that he's talking to you from jail somehow on a burner phone or something, and that he's
here's the thing though, is that
criminal with all these
space,
convictions, it's been in jail for like 20 years, then the guy's not credible. Then that this guy's a bullshitter, because
one of the best.
He's claiming that he was getting all these briefings, but the paperwork shows that he's in prison while he's claiming he's getting all these briefings. He claimed he got briefings from 2003 to late 2012, but much of which he had spent in prison. So what? The top secret government that knows all about the aliens.
Then he changed it. Then he changed the dates. Like the guy's lying. Because I mean, I'll send you some court documents, and you can like. I started to send them to Art Levine, who was asking about him, and I didn't want this shit like on like a newspaper.
Be careful with Mr. Levine. He'll make you his unpaid.
I love Art.
I love him too, but
he will put you to work. He will put you to work.
Yeah, I was just about to say you're about to become his unpaid research assistant, dummy.
Oh my god, those 3 a.m. phone calls.
He's like, well, can you just
those
send
2
me
a.m.
this?
phone calls?
Yeah, can you just send me this? Can you just send me this? Like, dude,
some
I don't
notes,
have time for all this.
Write a couple of theses. Yeah, I need a storyboard. But that Charles McNeil stuff. Like, if you start looking the other way, not like present, if you start looking into the past, that shit gets really dark. And not that it like makes up for anything, but not that it absolves him of any responsibility for his actions as like an adult, but it goes like both ways, like, you know, that, and yeah, but I want nothing to do with that guy. And the thing is that space started as something completely different. It was going to start, that space was supposed to be us just like going over
spaces,
his
like,
document, you know?
Everybody wants me to do spaces, and someday I'm going to do that. But to me, spaces of one or two things: either people are yelling and screaming and arguing with each other for hours on end, or it's like people telling these ridiculous woo stories about their superpowers and stuff.
This is
and
why
like,
you need the UFO research group. All right. This is what I came to promote tonight, besides my, you know, Bob Lazar theory. And I know I had it on earlier. Just let me share my screen. All right. So this will be the third one this Sunday. All right. So it's myself, UFO Mean Girls, and Mr. Thomas Whitmore are the hosts, you know, the host and the two co-hosts. But it's a group thing. We have what we've been doing the first time. I forgot what we listened to the first time. I don't know. This past time, though, we actually listened to the old Art Bell episode, the entire thing where it was Doty and Greg Bishop, the guy who wrote Project Beta. We actually listened to that entire coast to coast, you know, 2005 episode. And then we stopped every 30 minutes and we discuss what we've heard. And then we go and we listen to another 30 minutes, stop, and we, you know, do that. So what we're doing this Sunday, and it's no interrupting people. You know, everyone gets a chance to speak. No off-topic stories, no disrespect, no derailing. We stay on topic. We're trying to look at the history that formed the like foundation for like modern ufology. We're trying to get to the roots, the history, not the drama of today, but the drama of the past that, you know, actually is in the history books. So we're gonna, you know, go to what, you know, we consider to be the end of the innocence, you know, which is when Bill Moore did his 1989 speech at the MUFON Symposium, admitting that he had been disinforming.
Yeah, this sounds like something that I would enjoy. And if you send me a link to it, I'll tweet it.
Come and join us.
Well. And I will.
And that's Sunday.
I will put it in the description of this video too, if you have a link to it already.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to listen to the entire speech, most likely. And Thomas Whitmore is one of the best, like, Majestic 12 researchers out there. UFO Mean Girls, another fantastic person, just fantastic researcher, you know, talented dude. And it's just, we want to get back, I don't know, to kind of like get away from, I mean, it's like there's so much going on right now. And I just feel like, you know, to have a space where people can kind of get away from, you know, all the horrible stuff that's going on in ufology you know right now. It's really,
you know what else,
horrible stuff going on, man.
It's
People are doing horrible stuff.
I jump into some of these spaces and I'm just as a listener, right? I don't have another, like, a burner Twitter account I could use, but I guess now you could join anonymously, but I never do that. I just joined and I'm listening. And every once in a while I join a space and somebody will notice that I'm there and be like, Stephen Cambion is here. What is that cocksucker doing in here? He's a debunker. So, you know, like, oh, come on, you asshole. I'm just listening to see what you're talking about. And you know what? It's probably nothing I want to hear. So see ya.
That's probably like elections. Oh man, did I tell you what, this guy, like this old guy named Elections, he's angry at the world, you know, and everything. Elections or Perish. Oh, he hates you. Oh, man. Every time that I say your name, which is every time that he's in the room just to piss him off. Oh, he goes off. Like, I don't know what you did. You debunked something of his that he held personally deep down.
In my experience, the people who really, really hate my guts, they hate me for ruining something that they used to enjoy that they can no longer enjoy because now they know it's total horse shit, you know? And I've lost my patience for some of the stupider people. Like I have an autistic son who's very, very, he's nonverbal. He's very handicapped. And I don't like the word retarded, but I just started using it to some people. Like there's people in my YouTube comments telling me that the piece that we did on Linda Moulton Howe, selling fake pictures of aliens as real pictures of aliens, the second one, we caught her twice now, that was an unnecessary hit piece. And how dare you? She's a serious journalist. You know, so I just, I'm losing it on these people. Like, are you kidding me? We caught her selling completely fake pictures of aliens twice, and you're saying this is a hit piece? She never gave the money back.
Though, right? Like
she never gave the money back. She doubled down. So I asked that guy if he was retarded or something. And I don't like to use that word, but if you're going to tell people that's a hit piece, no, show me where I got my facts wrong. Unlike Linda, who was selling these completely fake pictures of aliens. Dude, she brought in a remote viewer to see the death of the alien laying on the table. It was completely fake CGI pictures. And the remote viewer comes in, tells her how the alien on the table died and what happened. The spaceship crashed and all this bullshit. I'm like, oh my God, and we tracked down the artist. He was, I think he was Brazilian or Portuguese. He was from Portugal. And we did a whole interview with him, and he thought this whole thing was hysterical when he heard that Linda was selling his pictures. He made those pictures for a fictional web blog about the Men in Black in Brazil or something, And he thought it was hysterical that she's selling this as real pictures of aliens, And it's so funny because they're labeled fake on multiple websites. She can't do a reverse image search. She still doubles down.
What's your thoughts on Colaris? Do you have a debunk for Colaris?
No. That's one that's in my gray basket. Generally, unless I've done a full deep dive on a certain case or topic, I kind of just say gray basket until I do, because you're
what else
a good
is in your
researcher.
gray basket? Yeah, but I got to know. Just give me one other thing that's in your gray basket.
I'll always have Roswell in my gray basket because there's just so much information and conflicting stories, and you don't know who to believe. But one of the things that I always say is that the book Children of Roswell, to me, keeps me on the fence of that, because I just don't find it plausible that multiple people on their deathbeds as they're dying would suddenly tell their children that they saw alien bodies in 1947 at Roswell. And these are verified people that did work at the base during that time, So,
yeah.
And we did, it's funny. I did this Roswell big video where I thought, well, if I just get all the world's leading authors, experts, and researchers into Roswell, I'll figure this thing out. And we had everybody. We had, Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and Tom Creary and Stanton Friedman and Cal Korff and Jeremy Rise, alien scientist, and a couple other people.
What was Stanton Friedman like? What was Stanton Friedman like? Pretty cool.
Yeah, he was very cool. He used to he always called me kid, which was weird to me, but he's an old guy, and he was really nice to me. When I first talked to him, I was still trying to hold on to Bob Lazar, and he started telling me, look into this, here's a red flag, and we had a bunch of off-air conversations, because when I did the interview with him, he's like, you have my phone number. If you ever just want to talk shop, give me a call. And so when I was working on something, I would call him and talk to him about whatever I was working on, especially if I felt like I was at a dead end or I didn't know where to go next. And he would help me. He was a very good guy. I miss him.
So jealous.
Yeah, I got lucky. Man. What's so funny is I've seen the guy on documentaries. I've seen him on television and growing up or whatever. And so I started this podcast before this one. It was just an audio podcast called The Midnight Hour. And I was talking to somebody and they said, what you got to do is you got to use that podcast to get your dream guests on. And I said, well, yeah, but some of these people are so big, they'll never talk to me. I got three listeners right now or whatever, 100 listeners. I don't know. But after some time, that show started to grow a little bit. And somebody that knew him said to me, why don't you ask Stanton Friedman to do an interview? And I'm like, he'll never do that. And they're like, here's his phone number. Call him up and ask him. And I called him up and I explained to him, I don't have much of an audience, but you're an expert. You're one of my, one of the guests I'd really love to have on the show. And he just said, let me know a time and date you want to do it, kid. And then
okay, I've heard about somebody asking for like documents, and like he actually sent them. You know,
Yeah,
like he didn't even tell
that's
them that he
another
was going to
thing.
be sending
Yeah.
documents. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
so
he
cool,
asked,
man.
he asked me for my address once, and he gave me a bunch of like,
Maybe it was your
basically like,
story that I heard. Yeah.
yeah, he gave me basically a bunch of photocopied notes of all of his Bob Lazar stuff, and you know, like he was supposed to have this meeting with Bob Lazar and all this stuff. It's interesting to read that stuff. Yeah, he was one of the good guys. I do think, though, I always preface and tell everybody, though, I think he was 100% wrong on some things, but I think his heart was in the right place. He was fascinated by the mystery and he wanted to solve it, you know, and he spent decades trying to solve it and doing his best to solve it. But certainly, I think that him, like, you spend decades on a subject and you're going to reach some level of bias about that subject, right? So he was biased. He was convinced, Grider, that the aliens are visiting Earth. He was 100% convinced. And I did have a few conversations with him, like, you know, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, Mr. Friedman, and I don't see a lot of like smoking gun evidence. And he would say, oh, no, but it's the preponderance of all the evidence and all the sightings. You have to weigh everything. And so we disagreed on a lot of stuff. But like I said, I always thought his heart was in the right place. He was trying to solve the mystery, and you got to respect him for that. He spent decades trying to do that. And if it wasn't for him, nobody would even know the Roswell story, you know?
Really?
Rather be with Mick West.
How so?
Huh?
How so? Because I thought it was Corso. Oh yeah, that's actually Ashton Forbes's truck right there. I don't know if you saw that. I already lost it.
Bill Moore
Garcia plate on it.
It's really because of Bill Moore and Stanton Friedman that we know about
Corso,
the Roswell
right?
story. Yeah, no, Corso didn't have anything to do with the Roswell story, because Stanton Friedman famously found Jesse Marcel Sr. and he tells the story. He says he was doing a lecture somewhere about UFOs, and somebody comes up to him and goes, I have a friend that we do radio, what do you call that long distance radio? God, I'm blanking on it. Not CB radio.
Shortwave.
Ham radio.
Ham, yeah.
Because I got a buddy that I talked to over ham radio. His name is Jesse Marcel Sr. And he held pieces of one of those flying saucers you're so interested in his hands. And so Stanton Friedman's like, great, can I talk to him? And Stanton Friedman calls up Jesse Marcel Sr., and he was the first person to get to Jesse Marcel Sr. and get his story, I believe. So if not for Stanton Friedman, we wouldn't even know anything about the Roswell story. It was dead. It was a dead story after it happened until the 80s when Jesse Marcel Sr. came out with all of the stuff that we've all heard. So that's interesting.
What are your thoughts on Roswell? Like, you think it was an experimental aircraft? I mean, like, I know that there's multiple, like the human factor.
Yeah,
but if you had to pick, like, gun to your head, what would you pick?
There's really several explanations. One of them is that it was some kind of secret technology being tested, and therefore why there was all these cover stories. But one of the convincing things to me is the debris switch. A lot of people think that it's just Jesse Marcel Sr. that said, oh no, those famous pictures, they switched out the debris. There's another witness who was there with Jesse Marcel Sr. who said they switched the debris. This is not what we found in the debris field. This is a weather balloon. They switched what we really found for the weather balloon, which makes a cover story. So if they're willing to do a cover story, then one of two things. It could have been aliens, or it was some kind of secret technology. We had Walter Bosley on our Roswell series also, and he has a theory that it was some sort of space technology from the V2 projects from the Nazis that they were testing that came down, which is another possibility.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it was just a weather balloon, because a weather balloon does not leave miles long. There's multiple people that said that the debris field was miles long. A weather balloon comes down and it's a small pile of shit in the middle of a field. It's not miles long debris field. So who knows? But then I do have problems with the story. Like, originally there was no alien bodies, and that got gets tacked on. Now there's another crash site where maybe an escape capsule or another craft crashed in Corona, and that's Stanton Freeman's famous book, Crash at Corona. So it's one of those great mysteries, you know.
Did he ever write a book with Doty? Someone mentioned it the other day in a space, and I didn't think it was true.
I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware of, but that'd be a book I'd probably read.
Well,
Doty's
hey,
Doty's an interesting character. I interviewed him once, and he's very charismatic.
I listened
and
to
likable.
it, yeah.
Even when you think he's full of shit,
me and Doty talk in the DMs all the time. You know, Doty gives me like, you know,
the likable guy.
Yeah, pop recipes, and you know, he's been giving me tips on how to woodwork and you know how to. You know, the guy's great.
You just can't believe anything that he says is 100% facts,
Not at all.
though, because he gets caught in so much bullshit, like co-signing
tell me that
Charles
he's
DeMille, you know.
Oh, dude, that's the worst. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like I can forgive all the stuff that he did under orders in the service. You know, that's because I know how that is.
To my knowledge, I'm like the only person that ever asked him, like, do you regret what you did to this man? And wouldn't there
he
been
says
a better...
yes. Yeah. Like he said, yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently he's in the process of writing an autobiography. That's like some inside news. I don't know if you guys, I don't think he's ever talked about it. I don't think he's ever announced it. But
oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I enjoyed our talk, and we're just about over time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So I will add the link to the space you're promoting for this Sunday, and I'll do what time is it on Sunday?
9 p.m. Eastern, and please stop by. You know,
yeah,
no,
I definitely will. It'd be nice to be in a Twitter space with more serious people. I go into some of these spaces and somebody starts talking about their, you know, whatever, their superpowers or
no, man,
past lives, and I just go, oh yeah, shut it off.
Not going to happen. No, I mean, but like absolutely any attempts at derailing the conversation, I just stop it immediately. You know, and yeah,
well, yeah, that's the more proper conversation. That's the more proper way to run a space, because some of these spaces it's just chaos, and I'm not interested.
It's just so aggravating when it's 12 different people like talking about 12 different things. You can't ever have a conversation. You can't ever get somewhere and like, you know, advance like our knowledge if we're having 12 different conversations at the same time. It's like everybody already has their point that they want to make. Like we have a topic that we're talking about, you know, and like I said, it's you know going to be
yeah, that's a proper way to do it. If I ever do, you know, if I ever do a space, I'm going to do some ground rules like that as well. Like here's the topic for tonight. Let's stay on the topic. Don't come here and tell me about, you know, your alien abduction experience or the ghosts that you saw, because it's got to be more focused.
Yeah, but you got to have a good co-host though. Like, I mean, I got the best co-host, you know, UFO Girls. You got to have a good co-host.
We're going to do, I talked to Go Kick Rocks, Jess. She's going to be the co-host with me.
There you go. Yeah.
Also,
got to have a co-host who just.
Well, now you can do it on desktop, but back when we were, I've said 10 times I'm going to do it. You could only speak on the phone, but now you could do it on the desktop. Because remember, I'm literally half blind. So what we planned is that Jess would just run the space and I would just listen and talk. So I don't have to worry about the buttons and who's up and who's the speaker and who's, you know, we'll probably still do that.
Yeah, man, I love doing it with my desktop. I use like voice meters so I can do a soundboard and I can play directly from like my Brave browser while, you know, doing the space on my Chrome browser so I can play like the live audio. Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. It's, like spaces can be a really good thing, but they can also be a really toxic. They can be really aggravating. Like it's probably taken a couple years off my life, you know, being in spaces and having somebody drone on for like, I mean, just like hours at a time. And, you know, it's like people yelling at each other, people being ugly and then just like aggravating.
Yeah. Well, that's why I didn't want to do spaces, because for a while, every space I went in was just people arguing. I go, I don't want to do this for 2 hours. I don't want to yell and scream with somebody for 2 hours, you know?
Well, you got to be the host, man. You got to host and you got to have that mute button and you got to be able to kick people. Like I've kicked people who were my friends. Like, you know, it's caused serious issues. Well, Twitter,
yeah,
you know, like it's caused drama on Twitter.
Rules.
Yeah, you got to be willing to kick your own mother. All right, you know. I mean, if it's against the rules, it's against the rules. You know.
All right.
But thank you, Stephen, for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Good time.
Yeah,
we haven't done.
Enjoys the theory, you know.
we haven't done a show on Bob Lazar in quite some time, so we talked about some interesting things, and maybe for those people who missed all those other shows that I've done, this is a bit of an update and some good information about the false UFO messiah, Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I mean, just please, guys, like, if there's people out there that want to do their own research further up the road than what I've taken it, just be respectful, is all that I ask. George Knapp and his wife don't deserve to get harassed. We don't know anything for sure. This
I mean, what you have is a theory.
Just all a theory.
It's
a
interesting,
theory,
though. Yeah.
It's good. It's compelling. Yeah, but thank you. Hey, and
have a good evening. I will
hope to see you Sunday, all right?
I will at least drop in, I promise you. I'll be there.
All right. Take care, Stephen.
All right. Good night. All right. Grider, always interesting. He's been a guest twice now, and both times brought us some interesting information and things to think about. So I'll take some comments and questions from the live chat before we bounce on out of here. And for those unaware, there may not, I don't believe there'll be a show tomorrow night, but there will be quite a weekend here planned. I've got, I don't know if the third one is, one of the videos is 11 hours or 11 and a half hours. And one of the videos is 10 hours. And I don't know about how long the third one is, because I still have to make that after tonight's broadcast. I'll be making some Patreon and members only content in the next couple days. I'm just a little bit behind on things. We've got our new set in front of me, which I hope that will be debuting in the next couple of weeks. We've got a lot going on here. Al Garay says, thanks, Stephen and Grider. Good information tonight. Yeah. Plan D, hot night chat. Owie? I don't know what that means. Aliens or Sus says, I was abducted by the ghost of Sasquatch and love rumped by Dracos. I've got a story for sale. That's a likely story, right? Yeah, Operation Shutdown says Grider was a quality guest. Yeah, and like I said, we haven't done a Bob Lazar show in quite some time. So this is probably the last live show of the week, because life is better at the cabin. And thanks to my lovely wife, my children have off tomorrow and Friday. And I think she feels bad. So I'm going to do tomorrow with the children. And then she's taking off on Friday, which means I get to leave tomorrow night. As soon as my wife comes home from work, I think my car's already packed. And for those unaware, I'm working on the Hideaway, which is a little tiny cabin that's way off in the woods. There's no power, there's no internet, there's nothing there but woods. And, woods and animals, plenty of animals there. Hopefully, I will not see any bears there this weekend, but I'll be trying to get some walls up on the new Hideaway cabin. And I'm very excited because I have a bunch of windows, which I know is going to make it go faster because they fill up a lot of space that you don't need the logs for when you're putting the windows in. And I have a big door and a door frame. We're going to have a Hideaway cabin. Hopefully before winter. Trolley Troll says, going to be fishing, Stephen. What is the score? 21-3. I don't know. My son caught like 40 fish and I caught like 3. But in my defense, I was always helping, like he gets his line snagged and I got to redo his line with the hook and the bobber and the sinker and the bait, or I'm helping him rebait, or I'm taking the fish off the hook and helping him throw it back. Next year, I told him that we got to make it fairer for his old dad, right? Theory of the unknown, a confirmation of the truth yet settled upon. And now isn't it funny how the mind works? Earlier today, I was talking about there's some effect. I was talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, according to Google, is a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their own knowledge or abilities when they lack the expertise to do so. This effect can lead to poor decision-making, mistrust, and dangerous positions. So it's people with limited competence in a particular domain overestimate their abilities. And a good example of the Dunning-Kruger effect that I could think of is somebody like Ashton Forbes telling everybody that he's going to be selling free energy devices, or somebody like David Wilcock claiming that he's going to be selling anti-gravity powered or free energy powered anti-gravity hover cars. You don't have the skills necessary for this thing you're promising people. Dunning-Kruger effect. It's funny how the mind works. I blanked on that, and then it just suddenly popped in my head. So what can I say, friends? We've done our due diligence. I'm going to bounce on out of here. Not sure when I will be back, but follow me on Twitter at Stephen Cambion. Be sure to follow. Be sure to use our website. Keep up with all the latest episodes, whether you want the video versions of the episodes or the audio versions. They're all on our website, truthseekershow.com. One Truth Seeker, the word show, all one word, .com, truthseekershow.com. And like I said, it's a good idea to follow me on Twitter at Stephen Cambion, because then I always put whatever we're doing on Twitter before we do it. You could also follow me on Facebook, but I think I'm at my friend limit or whatever, but you could follow me there. So we want to thank all of you kind and generous benefactors. We want to thank our guest tonight, Grider, and all of you for joining us. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.